Welcome to First In, Last Out, and Laughing Loudest, the podcast dedicated to leading from the front the joy of the Lord, creating Christian culture, and God-glorifying dominion. Mary, therefore, took a pound of expensive ointment made from pure nard, and anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of the disciples, he who was about to betray him, said, "Why was this ointment not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief, and having charge of the money bag, used to help himself to what was put into it. Jesus said, "Leave her alone, so that she may keep it for the day of my burial. For the poor you always have with you, but you do not always have me." Welcome to 2026 and a new episode of First In, Last Out, Laughing Loudest. I hope you've all had a fantastic Christmas season celebrating the incarnation and what was the turning of the tides in the story of the world, right? The people who had walked in darkness have now seen a great light. We are here now celebrating the beginning of 2026, year of our Lord. I get an absolute kick out of the fact that the secularists tried to change, or did change, whatever, the way that we keep track of our years, going from, instead of, before Christ and Anno Domini, year of our Lord, AD, they now say BC and BCE, right? Or how's it go? No, pardon me. CE, Common Era, and BCE, before Common Era. And what's just funny to me is that, well, we're trying to get away from, or it seems like they're trying to get away from, the references to Christ, but they can't escape the fact that these two eras, the Common Era and the before Common Era, are still broken up by something. By what, right? You can just picture the naive child asking his teacher for the first time. It's like, what was the big event? Like, what happened that we would change the moment, right, at which we record time, we record history, right? It goes backwards. We count backwards from BCE and we count forwards from CE. What kind of monumental, earth-shattering event could have possibly been the thing by which we would record all of human history? It's like you can't get away from it. So I prefer, BCE, CE. You have before Christ's empire, and now here we are in Christ's empire. The king has come. His kingdom has been inaugurated. The government will be upon his shoulder, and of the increase of his government and of peace, there will be no end. So happy 2026, year of our Lord. I'm going to stick with AD, and, you can you can deal with that. We had a fantastic Christmas season. Our greatest little Christmas gift arrived December the 17th. Lydia Hope, our fifth child, arrived, and we just managed to miss the snowstorm. It worked out really well. We had clear roads to drive on to get to the hospital, and Diana and Lydia were stuck in the hospital for a little bit longer than they would have liked, as we had to wait for that snowstorm to pass. But no, everybody was healthy, and I managed to go bring them home eventually, and we've been doing well here. Over the last couple weeks, we were talking about New Year's resolutions. Diana and I were talking about our lives, what we're aiming at with our home, thinking about what areas we want to grow in this coming year. And my mind turned back to the image of Mary and her jar of perfume. So this is the section I just read for you, John chapter 12. After Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, he came back to Bethany to visit Lazarus and his two sisters, Mary and Martha. And Mary here anoints the Lord with an expensive jar of perfume. And if Judas's estimate is accurate, I think I would say that expensive is like the understatement of the century. So Judas says that this jar, this perfume, could have been sold for 300 denarii. Now, A denarius was a standard day's wage for a laborer, right? You go and you get a job, you work for a whole day, you get 1 denarius. So 300 denarii, or 300 denariuses, is 300 days' wages, right? We're talking about like a full year's salary. So imagine being a laborer working for a whole year, and if he could save every single penny from every day that he worked in the entire year, didn't spend anything at all on food, didn't have to pay any rent, didn't have to buy any clothes, just all 300 denarii went straight into his bank account. If he worked for 300 full days, taking the Sabbath day off, he would then have enough to go to the store, to the first century Sephora, and buy this jar of perfume, right? We are talking about something valuable, something expensive. This is like family heirloom quality perfume. Like this is your kid's inheritance, perhaps, that you've got stored away. And so Mary goes and does something incredible. She takes this year's salary's worth of perfume and dumps it out, right? Just pours the whole thing out onto the feet of Christ. And, John tells us the whole house was filled with the fragrance. Like, yeah, I can imagine, some people just spritz themselves a few too many times with their perfume, and it seems like it can fill out an entire house when they walk in. So imagine here, she takes this whole jar and pours out a year's worth of labor's worth of perfume upon the feet of Christ. Judas then is indignant, right? So John tells us actually he is the thieving keeper of the money bag. Judas was a thief. He was the treasurer, and he would help himself to what was in there. And so Judas feigns concern. He pretends to have concern for the poor, and he declares, man, this was a waste, right? What a terrible use for this perfume. Judas can think of many much better uses for this perfume, chief among them being the lining of his own pockets. But I digress. Well, Jesus in this story rebukes Judas. And what really struck me, I remember when I preached through this passage, was just how profoundly wrong Judas was. The other parallel accounts of this story in the Gospels mention the other disciples actually had similar thoughts, right? It's like, what a waste. What a waste to pour this all out on Christ. And they were all profoundly wrong. Because the fact is, there was no better possible use for that perfume than to be poured out upon Christ. So if you could travel to heaven right now, where Mary of Bethany has been for nearly 2,000 years now, in the presence of the Lord whom she loved, and if you could ask her, Mary, do you regret what you did with your perfume? What do you think she'd say? Oh man, yeah, it's really hard after that, because we could have really used the money. We ran into some lean years after this. Sure wish I wouldn't have done that. No. I think she'd tell you there was no better possible use for that perfume than for it to be poured out upon Christ. And what I want us to get is that there is no better use either of our lives than for them to be poured out for Christ, poured out in service to Christ and his kingdom, right? For this is what we are made for. We are made to serve God and to serve others. I think it's just such a valuable question, and it'll help you a lot in different areas of life to ask, what are things for, right? What is the purpose of this thing? And I think, Diana and I talk a lot about how it's easy to lose sight of that when you're doing something. I'm sure a lot of you just came through celebrating Christmas with your families, and there can tend to be a lot of stress around the holidays as people are preparing and they're trying to get things ready. And so it's just kind of ironic how in the middle of trying to prepare something that is ostensibly meant to be a blessing to your family, People can snap at their families. Right? Your kids come in, I'm sorry, I should have made this lesson for you all before Christmas, not immediately after. Just to have this in your mind as you're preparing, right? But your kid comes into the room while you're working on the turkey dinner and interrupts you and is getting in the way, and you snap at him and say, don't you know I want you to be happy? Don't you know I'm trying to do something nice for you? No, get out of here. And it's like so ironic that we can miss the purpose of what we're doing, right? It's like, hang on, the people are the reason, the kids are the reason, the family is the reason. And I've made similar points, right? As I've talked about doing my devos, and then a kid interrupts me. And then to my shame, I haven't always responded with perfect patience. And then you think about it later and it's like, you snap at somebody, you yell at them, you dishonor the Lord by saying, don't you know I'm trying to honor the Lord? Don't you know I'm trying to please God right now? Right? We can just miss the point so easily. I've said before, if I ever write an autobiography, just a story of my own life, I think I'd want to call it Adventures in Missing the Point or Adventures in Taking Your Own Advice or something along those lines. Right? But we need to look at what things are for. What is the purpose of Christmas dinner? What is the purpose of your living room, right? It's not just to be cleaned up nicely and then remain pristine. It is meant to be lived in. It is meant to be used. And here's the same thing for us. Just like that jar of perfume was meant in the providence of God to be poured out upon Christ, there is no better use of your life than to be poured out for Christ. We are made for this, to serve God and others, to serve Christ and his kingdom. Your life is meant to be spent, and it is going to be spent. Just before the holidays, I preached through Psalm 90, and I had that amazing verse in there, teach us to number our days that we may get a heart of wisdom. And I think this idea connects, right? Your moments on this earth are finite. They will come to an end. Your life is being poured out somewhere and on something. Now, if we could mix the metaphors here, if you are the jar of perfume, then you need to know the jar's got a leak. The bottom is broken, or it is being tipped over. There is now actually no delaying it or reversing it. You will be poured out. You are being poured out. The decision that you get to make is on what? Where will your life be poured out? In devotion to whom? Upon what person? Upon what cause? For what purpose? So my encouragement for you as we start this year, pour out your life. Work hard. Pour yourself out for Christ and his kingdom. Pour out your strength for others. And then go to bed tired. Work in such a way that your Sabbath rest on the Lord's Day is just amazing. Go to bed tired. Give like God gives. Open-handedly, freely, cheerfully, and with no eye upon the scoreboard. You think of it, God does not keep a running tally of how much he gives compared to how much he gets. Is it Romans 11, I think, verse 33 or 34, somewhere in that doxology at the end of Romans 11 says, who has ever given a gift to God that he should be repaid? There's this idea. It's like, can you put God in your debt by serving him? And so you think if God were to try to keep a running tally, God were going to keep track of how much he gives compared to how much he gets in return, that would never be even. In fact, we can't really give back to God. We cannot enrich him in any way. And yet, God gives to us in abundance. God gives to us life and breath and everything. God gives to us his only Son. God pours out grace upon us. He gives to us open-handedly, freely, and cheerfully. So for us, becoming like Christ who emptied himself out, who poured out his life unto death for his people, for the joy that was set before him. Becoming like Christ means becoming open-handed. It means becoming generous in every sense of the word. I have another analogy here that's helped me. I don't know if I'll be able to articulate it very well, but I'll try. I have two images in my mind that I realized are not actually opposites, but to me they are. So bear with me. The first image is that of a fountain, one that is ever flowing. It is consistently bubbling over in generous abundance. It is fed by underground streams that are just perpetual, and they just keep on coming, and you have this beautiful fountain that is consistently overflowing in abundance. And I think of that. That's the person that I want to be, willing to give, being fed perpetually by the fountain of grace that I have received, right? God has poured out everything to me. He continues pouring out his grace upon me day by day. And now I, in turn, need to let that grace overflow to others in an abundance of generosity with my time, with my attitude, with my resources, with everything. This open-handed picture of abundance and generosity, serving, being willing to pour myself out. So that's the first image, and that's who I want to be. The second image, and I realize this is not the opposite of a fountain, but bear with me. The second image is that of Gollum. So think of Lord of the Rings. I think it's one of the very first scenes in the movie where you get a glimpse of him. We just watched Lord of the Rings again recently. It's become our tradition when we have a new child. I take a little bit of time off, and in the evenings we'll watch Lord of the Rings together with a new baby. Don't ask me how that started. But anyway, the first one of the first scenes in the movie where you get a glimpse of Gollum, he's deep down in the depths of his cave. He's squatting on a rock, and you see he is just a wretched creature. He is completely folded over and just turned in upon himself. Right? That's my second image. So basically, you become what you do. Right? You become what you do. I like to think of every step you take or every decision you make is like taking a step in a certain direction. And so if you consistently choose selfishness, if you're consistently looking inward, looking to your own comfort and preferences, you are like Gollum, or you're becoming like Gollum in the process of becoming like him, turned in on himself, just a wretched, pitiful, selfish creature turned in, not giving, not generous, not overflowing, but turned in on himself. And so we see we are not meant to be inward focused. We become like that. We atrophy, we shrivel, we become that image. Now, if I could mix metaphors yet again, from my most recent sermon, what happens if you hold on to a seed and you refuse to plant it? Well, that seed remains alone. It dries out. You end up with a shriveled kernel. You get a little dry husk. If, in contrast, you are willing to plant it, if the seed will lay down its life, so to speak, go down into the earth and die, the result will be new life, multiplication. And you see, this is what we are for. Seeds are meant to be planted. That perfume was meant to be poured out on Christ, and so are you. Pour out yourself this year in service of Christ and his kingdom. Your life is being spent, so spend it on Christ. This is First In, Last Out, and Laughing Loudest. This segment of the First In, Last Out podcast is brought to you by My Kids Jokes. Okay, go ahead.
What did the eye say to the other eye? Between us, something smells. Daddy, Dad.
That's a good one.
Answer this eye.
What did the eye say to the other eye? What?
Aren't you?
Aren't I? Aren't I what?
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Apple.
Apple who?
Let's just say I just smell
What?
Let's just smell.
Okay, good one, Laji. Everybody's turn.
Yeah.
Okay. What's Peter Pan's favorite restaurant?
What?
Wendy's.
Ah, good one. Welcome to the Enchanted World segment of the podcast, the segment where I attempt to shatter the mundane. That is, observing things that we tend to take for granted and doing my best to show how utterly mind-bending, mind-blowing they actually are, and therefore, thus, to this end, the creativity of the God who invented it all and gave it all to us. And that is really just the goal of learning to see things more accurately, more as they truly are, so that we would then give thanks to the God who spoke all of these things into being, and we therefore would not banish him from our thoughts. I find mundanity, that's my word for mundaneness. I don't know if that's a real word. Mundanity. I'm coining it. Mundanity has a dulling effect on our spiritual senses. It causes us to not see what is really there, how amazing this creation is, and therefore we forget about the God who gave it to us. So mundanity deserves to be shattered. Now, one of my New Year's practices for the last couple years now has been to try to start every year with an annual read-through of two of my favorite books, those being Notes from the Tilt-A-Whirl and Death by Living, both by N.D. Wilson. If you remember way back when, over 15 episodes ago, to my first Enchanted World segment, it was really reading these books that has kind of prompted me to try to do this podcast segment in the first place. So I reference those. I'll keep referencing them. They're great. I would encourage everybody to read them. And it was a paragraph in Death by Living here that prompted this meditation, actually just a sentence even. But let's consider something that is about as ordinary and mundane as basically anything in our lives: water. All right, let's practice this together. Water is pretty mundane, right? Now, you've probably had some to drink today. If you haven't, here is your reminder. Stay hydrated. You should get the body break theme music right here. Anyway, but let's just think about water. Our bodies, they are about 60% water, if Google is to be believed. Our Earth is like 71%. The surface of the Earth is like 71% water. We really can't survive very long without it. We need to drink very regularly. Water forms ice crystals into the most intricate patterns. It is quite literally life for us, falling from the sky regularly. If that doesn't happen, if we don't get enough of this life falling from the sky, there is a chain reaction resulting in the RM telling you that you can't water your lawn anymore. You have to have a brown lawn. And I mean, there's, other side effects like the crops not growing, all the animals dying, and everybody dying as well. But I digress. Water forms these ice crystals into the most intricate patterns. It can make a slippery surface, which we then enjoy by strapping razor blades to our feet so we can cruise across it and whack rubber around with sticks. Wow, greatest game ever played. It fills the sky so that light refracts just the right way to create sunrises, sunsets, and rainbows. It can be used to cool engines and nuclear reactors. We boil it to cook our food. We keep it heated up in big tanks to bathe and shower with. We heat it and pour it over roasted and ground up beans to make the drink that angels enjoy in heaven. Here is another cool thought. From what I understand, the amount of water we have on Earth has been largely unchanged from the beginning of time. Well, certain types of scientists unable to account for the water on Earth and how it arrived or formed, they do what they like to do, and that is they punt the ball into space. We'll just move the problem over by theorizing that over billions and billions of years, all of the water that's currently on Earth arrived here from asteroids. Asteroids with ice hit our planet, and over time that brought enough water so that we have the water that we have today, right? That's quite the image. I'm picturing giant cosmic frozen water balloons. That's your theory, is it? But the thought that the water in the world has remained constant from the beginning of creation is a very interesting one. So just think of this. Are there water molecules that can remember standing up in a heap in the Red Sea? Or that can remember strangely supporting the weight of a Galilean who had complete dominion over them? Is there water that can remember being vaporized instantaneously by fire from heaven atop Mount Carmel? Or being changed into wine in a jar at a wedding in Cana? Are there still molecules holding together today which had the privilege of serving as the sweat that dripped down the beard of Christ, or came pouring out of his side when it was pierced by a soldier? Water can be used to skip rocks, to quench thirst, and to baptize. It is the haunt of Leviathan who dwells in the deep. It is the judgment that wiped out all the earth's inhabitants. It is the life from the sky. It is a symbol of cleansing and of eternal life. So, next time you turn on your tap, remind yourself, there's nothing mundane in this world. There's nothing mundane about water. Thank the Lord for his gifts. Live in awe in his spoken world. This is First In, Last Out, and Laughing Loudest.
Book? That's right. When I was your age, television was called books.
Well, maybe you should read a book.
This segment is brought to you by Little Pilgrim Coffee Roasters. Little Pilgrim is a small, family-owned coffee roaster desiring to honor the one true and living God in all things. Little Pilgrims is roasted locally here in southern Manitoba, and right now, first-time buyers who mention that they were sent by the First In, Last Out, Laughing Loudest podcast will receive 20% off of their first order. Just to be clear, this is a genuine offer. This is not another one of my joke ads. So if you want to support the show, support a local business aiming at God's glory, and get some fantastic coffee, go to Little Pilgrim Coffee on Instagram and get 20% off your first order. Welcome to the Lessons from Literature segment of the First In, Last Out podcast, the segment where I share a gem from a book that I have appreciated. Now, for the past couple of years, I've made it my New Year's practice to do an annual read-through of two books, Notes from the Tilt-A-Whirl and Death by Living, both by N.D. Wilson. Our gem for today comes from Death by Living. Now, to set it up, he has been interacting, and will be for the whole book, with the idea that, quote-unquote, life is a story. He starts off by playfully poking at the hipster who thinks that slapping the word story onto his Twitter feed or his Instagram posts makes them seem deep and meaningful. In this chapter, he tells the story of a trip that he took his family on, so I'll read it for you here. He says, "We've managed to rocket over the North Pole without incident. Our wings hadn't fallen off. The kids had been cheerful, excited, fed, exhausted, and asleep. 9 hours to leap from Seattle, stripe the night sky above worlds of ice, and then drop down toward isles that once held approximately 87.5% of my modern ancestors, and that now held my sister, my brother-in-law, their 5 children, and our waiting adventure. Just a few days before, I had called my sister and had asked her a simple question. If we fly over on Thursday, would you guys feel like renting a van, picking us up in London, and then road tripping to Rome and back again? She hadn't even needed to call me back. The cousins were in. Rome, and everything between London and Rome, was a little bit exciting for the eldest of our young people. But being with cousins, in a van, for days and days, jubilation. Ecstasy. Seamus was the wild card. He was 2 at the time, and he went by a simpler nickname, Fatty. How do you think Fatty will do? My wife asked herself as much as me. There's only one way to find out. Retrospectively, we called the trip Euro Cousin Tour 2009. Other names could have worked, but they all grew too narrow or too broad and unwieldy. Fatty sad all over, just misses so much of the joy. And he wasn't sad all over, just most places. The drama started in the jetway. We landed. I woke the children. I picked up Fatty and he buried his face in my neck. The other kids slipped on their new backpacks, and their excitement began to slowly climb up through their weariness, sparkling in their sleep-fogged eyes. We were near the front of the plane and made our way easily enough down the aisle, smiled at the flight attendants, received their compliments on the perfection of our brood, and then began our ascent up the jetway. Something hot and heavy slapped into my neck and ran down my back. I paused and looked around. I lifted Fatty up. He hit me with another hot chuck from the front. Just behind me, Rory panicked at the sight. He spread his legs, fully blocking all the passenger traffic behind us, and sympathy puked on the floor. My wife reached for Fatty. No, we had to get out of this tube before anything else could be addressed. She grabbed the girls, I grabbed Rory, and we all began to accelerate. But Fatty wasn't done. He painted on. And every time he did, Rory slipped my grip, stopped, hands on knees, corking dozens of people in behind him. No, Rory, no. Yes, Daddy, yes. Fatty's depths were unplumbed. Holding one human fountain and dragging another, I commanded Rory not to watch his brother. It didn't matter. My oldest son polka-dotted that jetway with pizza, imported from Seattle, at least every 10 feet. And I began to laugh. Hard. And very, very alone. My wife and the girls were out. The crowd behind us diligently admired abstract space with glassy eyes. Dozens of business-traveling Brits attempted to erase us from existence with flat faces. But their Jedi tricks couldn't touch our hard reality. We Wilson boys were there with flesh on, and we were hilarious. 2 of us were throwing up. 1 of us was wheezing laughter beneath the spatter. That sweet and holy concourse greeted us with wider spaces and freer air, and our wide-eyed female counterparts. My wife's laughter joined my own, but tinted with more grimace and horror. Dozens and dozens of people flowed past us in a river, missing this gift, this slapstick punchline to a long flight, offered to them by a whimsical god. Thanks to the infinite bureaucratic wisdom of some tomfool security consultant or appointed official, Heathrow had determined that rubbish bins were a security hazard, and so there were none. Heather began to strip Fatty. I stripped off my soggy sweater. I gathered up our shed garments like the righteousness of twin Pharisees and then threw the heavy wad enthusiastically against the wall. It slapped and sank. Where there be no rubbish bin, all is rubbish bin. And so our adventure began. Lesson 1. When one begins to make claims about life and its storyness, one should be careful. Stories tend to follow, and stories involve unpleasantness. God calls bluffs and makes narrative hypocrites of us all. Lesson 2. When faced with unpleasantness, trouble, there are only 2 ultimate responses with many variations. On the one hand, quote, "The Lord gives, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." On the other, quote, "Curse God and die." Variations on the latter can include whining, moping, self-pity, apathy, or rage. Variations of the former can include laughter, song, retellings, and an energetic attack of obstacles. If God gives you, or makes you, a joke, what are you meant to do in response? Receive it. Laugh. If God gives you an obstacle, what are you meant to do in response? Receive it, climb it, then laugh. If God gives you more profound hardship, what are you meant to do in response? Receive it, climb it, then laugh. Exhibit A, his son. Fatty made it into an umbrella stroller, wearing only a pull-up. I was wearing a mostly damp undershirt, but figured the Brits would prefer it to my skin. Thanks to Rory, wide stance hunch technique, he was virtually unscathed. Eventually we formed a luggage trolley train. My sister found us, and we were led outside to our communal steed. 5 cousins and an uncle were waiting inside an enormously long, white, bulbous van with a bloated abdomen and a discreet "Rent Me" label on its hindquarters. Its wheels were awkwardly tiny for its enormous length and girth, and the whole thing was shaking with internal cousin-caused excitement hidden behind tinted windows. Naturally, we loaded up and headed for Luxembourg. Now, I remember reading this for the first time and thinking, man, If that was me, right, halfway across the world, carrying my 2-year-old now covered in puke, I don't know if I'd be able to laugh in that situation. In the providence of God, I'm now a father of 5, and since the first time that I read this book, I have had to go several rounds myself with this particularly smelly foe. And overall, for the most part, I think I have responded fairly well. I'll spare you the gory details, but I think Living Fountains does describe it. Well, as I was reading through the story again today, I was starting to think, I think I might even be able to laugh in that situation now. I think I might. Awesome. Look how far I've come. Big round of applause for my progress in sanctification. And then a thought hit me, shattering my little moment of prideful glee over my own progress. God has sent me to trials, and I actually haven't always responded the way that I should. I haven't always received them graciously, climbed them, and laughed. Reading a book like this and getting a concrete, or should we say a liquid example, it can prepare you in one way for a particular thing, right? Okay, Lord, I'm ready now for all puke-related trials. Next one you send my way, I'm going to respond super well. I'm going to remember this story. But getting so narrow would be to miss the point. Our trials come in many different shapes and sizes. And as he actually points this out in the book, right? If God sends you or makes you a joke, what are you meant to do in response? Receive it and laugh, right? And that's not just this particular type of joke. A lesson that I've been trying to teach my kids is one that I need to remember myself. And that is, we really can make things harder on ourselves by taking ourselves too seriously. Right? We can make things harder on ourselves by taking ourselves too seriously. If God's providence makes you a punchline, you will enjoy the situation a lot more if you have the humility to be able to laugh at the joke. But if you're the fussy sort who would snap at any chuckling passerby with a very aggressive, "This isn't funny," then you are also the sort who definitely makes life harder on yourself than what you need to. And this lesson actually doesn't just apply to petty things. Right? He went on in the chapter here, if God gives you an obstacle, right, not just makes you a joke, but God gives you an obstacle, what are you meant to do in response? Receive it, climb it, then laugh. If God gives you a more profound hardship, what are you to do in response? Receive it, climb it, then laugh. Exhibit A, his own son. Joy is God's command for us in and through trials and sufferings of various kinds. If you don't believe me, you can read James chapter 1 and Romans chapter 5. Now, this story has stuck with me, and I want to be the kind of person who can laugh when God makes me a punchline, a person who would receive whatever God sends and be able to say with Job, "The Lord gives, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." May we reject all of the many gradations and variations of the second option, that one being curse God and die. This is First In, Last Out, and Laughing Loudest. And that's going to do it for this episode of First In, Last Out, and Laughing Loudest. If this has been a blessing to you, I'd ask you to please like and subscribe to the show. Share it with someone else who might be blessed by it as well. Share it on your social media feed. And if you're looking for a church that believes the Word of God all the way down and all the way across, I encourage you to come check out Grace Covenant Church in Altona. Lord willing, see you back here again next time. God bless.